everybody, and welcome to the Feminine Principle Podcast, Astrology for Authentic Living. My name is Mel, and I'm with Energetic Principles.
And I'm Shawna with Neo Feminine.
And we're doing our first maiden voyage of our podcast. So we thank you for being with us today. So just a little overview of what we plan to talk about here today, our topics and our purpose. We are going to be, our main goal is to give inspiration and guidance for the upcoming transits that are going to be happening within the next few weeks. Shawna and I will be providing real life examples on what to expect. We'll talk through the planets, through each contact they'll be making with each other, and see how that will affect our lives over the next several days, and how we can best use that energy to, not let it take us down, but so that we can power on through it and get the most out of it. So Shawna, what do we have going on in the planets this over the next few weeks?
Yeah, so the overall theme for this forecast is triumph against all odds. And I know that may sound a little bit intimidating, but there's a potential for overcoming obstacles and for creating a deeper connection to yourself over the next month. So I'm really excited about it. And I also want to share with everyone listening that some of these transits may influence you more than others based on your personal birth chart. So notice what resonates with you most and take what you like, leave the rest.
Yes.
Yeah. So
it doesn't all apply to each of us every time. So yes, pick and choose what resonates
and
with
I mean, if you have Venus or Pluto transiting specifically to your sun or your moon, you're going to feel that the most, more than anything else here. So I think we'll give some tips at the end on how to find that as well. But just to summarize what we'll be going over specifically today, we'll talk about the nodes moving from the Pisces Virgo axis over to Leo and Aquarius. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about, which is about redefining your destiny. We'll talk about Mars opposing Saturn, which is about getting shit done.
Yes.
And we always love that. We'll talk about Venus squaring Pluto, which is about healing relationships in a very deep way. Mm-hmm. And then finally, we'll talk about the new moon in Gemini, which brings new perspectives.
Yes, which we probably could all use after this. All the months of this year have been redefining destiny. I know that the nodes are going to be moving to, actually the nodes have already moved into Leo, but I think we've been redefining our own personality within our destiny over the last couple months. And these transits that are coming up, I think, are really going to highlight all the stuff that we've learned. It's kind of like a little last challenge. Well, we're going to have challenges our whole life, but in this particular scenario, it's just another hump. And luckily, with that new moon in Gemini, we'll be gaining a new perspective, which is very golden. To get over any hump, you need to have a new perspective. So let's start out with let's focus on the nodes and them moving into Leo and Aquarius and what we are terming redefining destiny. Mm-hmm. So Shawna's got a quote for us to lead us in.
Yes. So the quote that is so beautiful for this particular transition in astrology is by Maya Angelou, and she says, "You alone are enough. You have nothing to prove to anyone." And I love this so much for the Leo Aquarius axis because, so to put it into context, it's important to know and to pay attention to which sign is the South Node and which sign is the North Node. And with this, the North Node is in Leo. So we'll talk about that in just a minute, but just to apply it to this quote, Leo North Node is all about just showing up and just being your amazing self and knowing that that is enough.
That is enough. And yes, very well spoken. I was just reading about some particulars of Maya Angelou's life yesterday, actually, and how hard her life was, and it took her so long to be able to really find her voice. She actually didn't speak for quite some time. So knowing that she was enough and being able to put herself out there and not feel taken back or guilted by anyone, like just that proof of being more than what you are. She's a perfect example of that. So that's an excellent quote to kick us off, I would say. Because Leo is really all about, finding ways that we connect with our self-love, most importantly, I would think, because we can't really love others, and, what's out there in the world without really focusing that love on ourselves first. So I feel like there's going to be a shift, to a little bit more of a self-interest, which can be a good or bad thing depending on whose hands it's in, right? Especially like a good example with right when the nodes moved into Leo at 29 degrees, that happens to be our good old President Trump's ascendant sign. And that's the day that he fired the FBI director. So you can see that he obviously had his own self-interest in mind there, and he was able to take action. But let's hope we're not all using it for selfish motives. That we're going to get in touch with ourselves more.
Yeah. And, what I think is really interesting about the nodes is there's so many different views on it. I love some of the books that Stephen Forrest has written. And in that he talks about how you're moving from the South Node to the North Node. It's an evolutionary kind of pattern where, in a way, you want to leave the South Node issues behind, which in Aquarius, this is about activism and healing humanity and all of these things, and moving, kind of letting that simmer and moving into this self-interest, moving into having confidence that Leo has, and creativity too. But I was recently taking a course. I took one of, I might butcher his name. It's Austin Kopak. Is that how you say it? Have you heard of him, Mel?
I have not heard of him, no.
So he focuses a lot on the nodes, on the lunar nodes, and he says that sometimes the North Node can be an exaggerated, you're so hungry for this thing that you kind of overdo it a little bit.
Yes. You don't well, that's the thing, is the nodes are really all about balance. Any type of opposition is balancing that out. So, either that North Node is not being, you're not striving, hard enough for it in a sense, or not it's a work thing. It's more about an awareness thing when it comes to the North Node.
Yes, I totally agree. It's awareness.
Yeah, you're right. There could be a hunger for it, especially when you are aware of it. You kind of might direct yourself more that way and put more, amp it up a little bit. But it's the same way with the South Node, though, is that the South Node is, like you said, there's a lot of qualities that we have to move away from in order to push ourselves in that North Node direction. But the balance that comes back with that is that the North Node, when we do put our energy there, we're actually going to receive some gifts and talents from the South Node. So say in Leo, you finally take the chance to put out, your creative energy and the projects you've been working on, and you've done all that you can. You put your heart into it. It's really coming from a joyful place, and in turn, society, the 11th house in Aquarius, can then, are behind you and can support you at that time, because you were able to take on that, your just be able to be yourself and put it out there. And then through that, you get the support from others.
Yes. Yeah. And so what I would offer to anyone listening is, where would you benefit from leaning into being more creative? Where would you benefit from putting yourself out there?
Yes.
Where would you benefit from Leo's all about taking emotional risks. It's about putting something that's very near and dear to your heart out into the world.
Yes.
And so where could you do more of that? those are the kinds of things that, and this is so especially true for people that do have either Leo or Aquarius energy, Leo or Aquarius planets in their natal chart. But for all of us, how can we share more love?
Absolutely. And I think that part of it could even be like asking yourself how you can, get creative, with your own, your own actions to make this world a better place, because we're having a crisis of the planet in a sense. And no, it's out there. Some people might not think so, but I think this is a great way for us to make changes within ourselves and get creative about how we, live our own lives, so that we can make, everything around us a better place as well.
Yeah, and one last part that I want to add to this that I think is really important is Aquarius can also denote where there has been trauma, and this can be trauma through rejection. This can be trauma through being the outcast or the ugly duckling, or it can even be physical or emotional trauma. Going back to Maya Angelou, the reason why she didn't speak was because she was abused, and there was she had a lot of trauma early in her life. And so what's really sweet is that through all of this creativity, and like you share, Mel, like doing something that is from the heart, but that can also benefit other people, that can be so healing for the trauma.
Absolutely. And that's how she got through it. She, because that's the thing is like the healing, being able to heal that Aquarius trauma is really coming down to how much you love yourself, how much self-love and self-care can you give yourself in order to realize that holding on to those past things that are usually out of your control are most likely out of your control. No one chooses for a traumatic thing to happen to them, but you can choose how you can heal from it, and to love yourself and know that it's not your fault, and it was just beyond your control, and it's part of your journey. So yes, I absolutely agree with that. So I would say as far as the North Node's moving into Leo, which it will be there for 18 months, it's a rather long cycle, and we're all living it at the same time. It's a societal type thing. We're just going to be asking ourselves, how can we love ourselves more? Where can we put that love of ourselves into healing? And where can we put that love into our own expression and creativity?
Beautiful.
All right. North Node in Leo. I am beyond excited. I could already feel the energy when it moved in. I knew it because we had just been in that Virgo Pisces cycle, which is actually my nodal axis. So I know all about it. But, reality, is a bitter pill sometimes, and we're all feeling that. So I think we're all going to be grateful for the nodes making that switch.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. I think it'll be a refreshing change. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So now that the nodes have moved, let's move on to our next aspect. That'll be, to me, it's pretty much a theme of the month. Is Mars opposing Saturn, which we are dubbing getting shit done. So give us the quote, Shawna.
Yes. Okay. So this quote is by Peter Drucker, and he says, "Until we can manage time, we can manage nothing else." And I love this because Saturn is typically associated with time, and it's associated with time because Saturn puts boundaries around things, and it says, okay, you literally only have so much time in the day or so much energy or so much whatever. What are you going to do with yourself? What are you going to do with your resources? And Mars is also about boundaries, and Mars wants to move, it wants to do, it wants to get shit done. And so to be honest, I'm a little bit nervous, but like also excited about this combination because there's such a potential to succeed.
Yes.
But it is like it makes me think of like a funnel kind of where it's like, okay, like what are you going to get done? What are you going to focus your time on?
Exactly. And just so you out there know that this Mars opposition to Saturn will be going exact on Sunday, May 28th. So we're already beginning to feel it, when something is in orb, especially in an opposition or a conjunction, we're going to feel it several degrees ahead. So as we speak of this, it's already brewing. And you're totally right about Saturn being Saturn's the timekeeper, It really does. It focuses on how much time you have, and it also focuses on your priorities and what you need to prioritize, which Mars and Gemini, speaking from experience, as I have Mars and Gemini, it's not the most friendly energy to Saturn's favorite thing, and that is focus. It gives you assert yourself in more of a random way, and your curiosity takes you here, there, and otherwhere, and before you know it, time gets away from you. And I'm very guilty of that myself, and so this transit makes me a little on edge as well. But I think that opposition, opposition is always, if it's used correctly, is meeting in the middle. So how can we manage our time to get things done? We've been on a foundational kick through this whole Taurus cycle. And we've been building things. All of us have been building things recently. And in order to take those seeds from their initial sprout, you have to tend to them and take the time and awareness and focus to be able, and the discipline, which is Saturn's all about discipline, to be able to make that a foundation, a solid foundation.
Yeah. And, as you're speaking, Mel, it makes me wonder if this opposition may actually be very helpful because the two balance each other out. I wonder if Saturn would actually bring some sense of calming down to the Mars and Gemini energy.
Exactly. So, slow your roll, Gemini.
Yeah, slow your roll.
Slow that roll.
Mars and Gemini.
What are you doing?
And then in the opposite direction as well, Mars and Gemini may help Saturn to move a little bit more, not to move quickly, but to be more flexible.
Flexible. That's what I was going to say. Be more flexible.
Yeah.
And it is a mutable sign. It's true. Going with the flow, these two mutable signs, like it's a back and forth type of energy. So, it leans itself to flexibility, but within reason, because Saturn's all about boundaries. So I think you're absolutely right about that. If you're too holed up and you got too many boundaries around things, now it could be time to open that up, to assert yourself in other areas or to rein yourself in.
Yeah. And, so, two other things too that I think are important for this particular transit is anyone who is currently going through their Saturn return will probably feel this a little bit more.
Oh, yes.
It could be a few potentials. If you're going through your Saturn return, Mars, it enlivens, it activates, and it can bring a sense of like, oh my gosh, I want, like you have a fire under you.
Yes.
It could also bring up anger. And if you're listening to this podcast, I would imagine that you have more of a focus towards things that are spiritual or trying to improve yourself. And so this could actually be a really positive transit for you to get in touch with healthy, righteous anger. And I think so many times we view anger as a negative thing, but it could be a way for you to connect with yourself and to stand up for yourself where you need to.
Absolutely. And I think that a key component to anger, and when we feel it, is through limitation. We get angry when things don't go our way, or you feel restricted from something, or, and Saturn is all about limitation. And I think you're absolutely right. For anybody that's experiencing a Saturn return right now, this is going to be a big deal, to get yourself in shape, because limitations are there for a reason. Usually we're limited in some way for our own good, even if it doesn't feel that way. There's a reason for it, that we are held back to either push us into a new direction, to have us think outside the box. Because keep in mind, this is all happening in the Gemini Sagittarius axis, which is about, thoughts versus experience. So say your Mars is, Geminiing out and all the thoughts and potentialities of things. And, Saturn and Sag is like, well, you need to get out there. You need to experience it. How are you you can't have the thoughts swirling around here, there,
Yes,
without.
you need to do.
You need to experience, and then you're really going to gain an understanding of, what it is you need to do, because we're all trying to master success right now. We all want to succeed. We have this drive to succeed, and this transit can really take us there if we're willing to do the work.
Yes, exactly. And what you say, Mel, it makes me think of, I have this book that's about the chakras, the energy centers in the body. It's by Anodea Judith, and she talks about the root chakra, and she talks about limitation, and she says that manifestation, like the creation of things, is created by limitation. You can't sit down and write a book unless you focus yourself and you have this limitation of, okay, like I need to have so many words on so many pages, etc. And, I've been really fascinated with Saturn as an indicator of building something that's really powerful, or creating something that has staying power, whether that is in a business project or a relationship. You see Saturn a lot in marriage type or long-term committed type of relationships. And so I think it can also be a really beautiful time to build something that has lasting power. Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. So I would just ask yourself, perfect questions to ask yourself during this transit are going to be, what boundaries can I put on my own energies so that I can be focused, focus my drive to success, how can I rein myself in right now? It's not forever, sometimes it's a short limitation, but in the long run, you're going to see, much more reward from it. Yeah. And especially if you happen to know your natal chart, if you have a copy of your birth chart, where is Saturn? Which house? And the house will share with you which area of life you need to be, you would benefit from being more responsible, like doing the things where you're like, fuck, I don't want to do this, but I need to do this, for me, that's in my fourth house. So fourth house is about the inner world and home and psychological strength and all of those good things. So yes, mine is in the second. Oh, fun. Yes, figuring out all that rein-in, that spending habits and, yes. So I find it interesting. I drew a couple cards for this Mars Saturn opposition, and I got the Three of Swords paired with the Ace of Wands. And this Three of Swords can really trigger some type of turmoil or a breakdown within something. And a lot of times it can be relationships, or the relationship to yourself. Something's not being able to be seen right now. But that's okay. You just kind of got to work through it and not really push yourself forward as fast as you might like to, because, that Three of Swords is really, we're readjusting. We're readjusting things here. And, And that's where probably Saturn's coming in with the limitations. With that Ace of Wands, it has to do with our inspirations and these little buds that we have been going, that have been growing recently. So chances are there's going to be some type of setback with what you have been trying to manifest, or the inspiration that's there for that. So just be patient with yourself and know that if you have any confusion at this time, rather than going full steam ahead, I would rein it in. Pull it back, get in touch with your own faith in the situation, because, Sagittarius has also a lot to do, with faith and kind of higher, bigger perspective things. So, just know if you encounter that, yes, just pull it back a little bit, because there's probably going to be obstacles, being at Saturn, in your way, but, it'll work out for your benefit in the end.
Yeah, and you know what? I know the card. I know the Three of Swords card, and that one it's an interesting card. But I find that it always comes up when there's something that I need to let go of.
Exactly.
I've been hanging on to.
Exactly.
But when I let go of that thing that I think is making me happy, then something else new comes in. And I'm like, wow, I'm so happy I let go of that thing, because it wasn't really serving me.
Exactly. Which is a great way to look at it, because chances are that Ace of Wands could be saying that if you are letting go of that new inspiration and that new flame and bud of being able to create something, because it's a really creative power, fire, will be there for you. So I think that's a wonderful interpretation. Okay, so now that we've focused on our, and I just want to add real quick before we move on that I found that this whole opposition of Saturn was a theme for this coming cycle, this Gemini cycle, because once we do our opposition with Mars later in the month, we're going to have the Sun opposing the same area. So at that point, we will have gone through all the Mars struggles and be able to gain awareness once the Sun hits there. So you can probably look for release when the Sun arrives there. I think it's about mid-June that happens.
Yeah, I like that.
So, okay, let's see what else is going on. So we're going to talk about, this can be a little bit of a sensitive one. This is Venus squaring Pluto, and we dub this as healing relationships. And I just want to tell you that Venus is going to square Pluto, exactly on May 25th. I believe that is the new moon, right? I think it's around the same time as the new moon. Oh, well, wonderful way to start. So let's see what quote Shawna has to share.
Okay, so this quote is from one of my very favorite books. It is Women Who Run with Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. So this quote is from one of the stories in that book. It's called The Skeleton Woman, which I think is very Venus and Pluto.
Yes.
So Venus is about relationships of all kinds, romantic, friends, business partners, etc. Anything where you relate with another person. And then Pluto is it's going into the unconscious. It is shadow work, and it's also healing and transformation. Yes. So she says, if one wishes to love, there is no getting around it. The world of embracing her is a task. Without a task that challenges, there can be no transformation.
That is true.
Yeah.
And Pluto is all about transformation, in doing the work in that area. Speaking as, I'll just go ahead and say right now that both Shawna and I are experiencing, Pluto opposition in our suns, because we both have suns in Cancer around the same degrees. So, we can definitely speak on some Pluto. So let's just talk about their positions right now. Venus is in Aries, which Venus is in Aries is the detriment. This is not a strong place for Venus to be. It's aligned more with being, independent, and Venus is all about opening up and like giving. And, if you're in it for yourself and being a little more on the independent side of things, it kind of goes against Venus's, innate nature. And then Pluto and Capricorn, Pluto has been wreaking havoc in so many areas. But great, we're breaking things down, and Capricorn really has to deal with, control and the duty we feel to things. So how, and I also want to point out that, I think as we're taping this, podcast, we actually have Venus, opposing Jupiter. So, So there's a T-square action going on here, and any of you cardinal signs out there are really going to feel it, So what are you getting from this Venus square Pluto action?
Yeah, so with this kind of transit where there's an inner planet, Venus, to an outer planet, Pluto, I always like to look at I like to look at it as being within a cycle. So the cycle is where the conjunction happens. Yes. So because whatever is happening this month with relation to Venus square Pluto, I want to put it in context. So Venus conjuncted Pluto, which is the beginning of the cycle, around Thanksgiving 2016. So around November 26th, 2016. And so Venus is relationship, it's love, it's beauty. It can also be sex and money. And Pluto calls for something to die so that something new can be born. And this does not necessarily have to mean literal death and rebirth. But there's something inside of us that is related to our ability to have relationships, especially because the beginning of the cycle was in Capricorn. It's around your personal power, how it is that you use your power. Are you a good steward of your power, your energy, even your money and your resources? And so, I would just notice whatever was happening in your life around that time, late November last year, and compare that to what's coming up now. I think that this time there's a lot of potential for healing via vulnerability. And
yes.
Yeah.
And I when we first were preparing ourselves to speak on this topic, and I went back to the conjunction chart, I realized that is the time that I had a beautiful kitty, Felicity, that I had for 18 and a half years, and who was a Taurus, ruled by Venus, and she passed on that exact conjunction in a most beautiful way. She couldn't have been, it was Venus conjuncting Pluto personified, because yes, she did pass, and yes, it was a great loss for me, but it was a beautiful passing. Like, she went out with grace, which is Venus, to the nth degree. So that was an interesting, and now I have a new kitty as I reach myself out. So as we're hitting the square, I'm developing this, new love for my new kitty. So, it's not all about just our relationships with, people. It can also be pets and things that are important to us in life and that bring us joy. Yes, but I think with Pluto, and I just drew a couple cards here for this transit, the Father of Cups paired with the Seven of Swords. The Seven of Swords caught my eye because, that has to do with secrecy and something not being upfront. And Pluto what Pluto demands of you is honesty. And so that is what we're being challenged with right now is, how honest are we being in our with ourselves and our love relationship, especially Venus and Aries. Like, some of us might need a little more, me time, not too much. I mean, if you've had too much of that and, that opposition with Jupiter and Libra, it might be pulling you back in like, hey, you're not giving of yourself fully to this other person. So it can be the balance between those two things, in my eyes.
Yeah, that card. Oh, yeah, that card is interesting. It's like a guy that has a bunch of swords and he's kind of like sneaking away.
Yes, exactly.
He's like trying to get away with something. And
Exactly.
like that is so key for this transit for me, because whenever Pluto is around, you cannot get away with shit.
You
on
can't.
The inside, on the outside, Pluto is like, like we need to dig deeper. We need to dig deeper. And Pluto requires deep integrity and honesty. And that doesn't always mean on the outside. For me, I think it means integrity within yourself.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, how are you going to live with another if you can't live with yourself?
Exactly. And, you know, it's so funny. I think that when, in my personal experience, and then with reading for clients too, when they're like, all right, like they accept their shortcomings or their challenges or how they really feel about something, that's when there's an opening for people to come in, because they have integrity and people are attracted to that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's true. Like, you know, there's really an empowerment to that. Once you get in line with your own integrity, you get this kind of like spiritual juice, you know, that it's like an affirmation of sorts within yourself. And then, like you said, others begin to see it, because it's just like it's like a magnet. It sucks other people in. Once you see someone living authentically, you want to do the same. You know, it's like leading by example. So everybody wins in the situation if you're just honest with yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, that I think there's so much out there now in spiritual communities about like speaking your truth and being authentic and all of that. And I think that there's like, for me, I've noticed that there's a part of me that wants my authenticity to look a certain way. And I'm here to share with you, it doesn't always look that way.
Yes.
So with this transit, and you know, it's different with everyone depending on where it's activating your chart, but practices that have really helped me with this kind of thing is meditation, journaling, any kind of like therapy work, whether that's talking to a friend or a healer that you really trust. Any way that you can go deeper inside of yourself. That could even be using tarot or using astrology to understand what your motives are.
Yes. Because I think that another just quick highlight of this possibility of Venus squaring Pluto is actually really coming into really realizing how much you might be dependent on other people.
Yes.
Because Pluto has this obsessive compulsive quality about it. And that's why a lot of times you'll see relationships that have gone bad, or domestic violence relationships. You're going to see a strong Pluto in their connections together, because there's a controlling mechanism there. So here with Venus and Aries opposing the, you know, Jupiter and Libra, we're trying to find that balance of you versus me, my independence versus my, you know, giving into another to join together. And that Pluto is squaring that. So is there a healthy balance in your dependency, or your, you know, we're all striving to be interdependent. You know, you want to be able to merge with one, but you also have to be able to stand on your own. So these are issues that are coming up right now, that you might have to address.
Definitely. And along these lines, another resource is that I think is so perfect for all of these things, especially where you're talking about, Mel, finding this balance between strong inner self and strong confidence of self and boundaries, and then also giving and receiving with another, is the book from the quote, which is Women Who Run with Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. Like, all of the stories in there are so rich, and they have like this Plutonian kind of vibe. And like the whole idea is helping women to connect with their, what she calls their wild woman side. And so it's like this strong, powerful, but very vulnerable kind of energy that women can have. And
it's hard to be vulnerable, you know, like that's, the real healing is done through your own vulnerability, and your strength kind of lies in your lack of strength at times.
Yes.
And,
yes.
You know,
and there's so much that I could say about that. I think that could be a whole nother podcast. But I think that, yeah, it's like vulnerability doesn't mean, like taking your clothes off in the presence of anyone, who's, you know, around. It means like being very selective with the people that are safe for you to be vulnerable with, and seeking those people out and being very discerning. And then when the time is right, when you're like, yes, like I can do this with this person, then doing so and not holding back. It's very tricky. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a tricky balance that we play, you know, and, just to run back to the tarot real quick with that Father of Cups that was paired with the Seven of Swords, you know, Father of Cups is really mastering our own emotions, and being able to, be vulnerable, you know, and to like get in touch with our deeply rooted insecurities that we all have, in order to be more open and honest with others. So I think that is a main theme of this, Venus square Pluto. So yeah, just ask yourself, you know, you know, how vulnerable am I allowing myself to be? You know, am I really giving myself the chance to heal?
I love that.
So yeah, so, well, we can all look forward to a little, Venus squaring Pluto. So actually happening that same time, and we can move on to a little brighter of a topic, because the last two require work of us.
Yes,
Which not,
definitely.
you know, it's asking something of you. This one is kind of more, in my mind, kind of a little more of a gift, and that is the new moon in Gemini. As you know, the sun is about to move into Gemini as we record this podcast. Luckily for us, the new moon happens pretty early once that sun moves into Gemini. So we're going to have our new moon. It's going to be at 4 degrees Gemini. And I believe it's on the same day as the Venus square Pluto. Let's see. Yes, May 25th. So, we can look forward to those same things happening. So new moon in Gemini, you know, new moon is all about where we're rebirthing and we're starting something. So, perhaps it's a blessing that this, transit is right at the beginning, because we can actually really gain a lot of solar juice, from what we're experiencing now. So let's see, what quote Shawna has to share.
Yeah, so new moon, this is all about new perspectives. And so this quote that I love for this new moon, that I love for Gemini in general, is by Albert Einstein. And he says, I have no special talents. I am just passionately curious.
I love it.
And I love this for Gemini because this is a part of Gemini's gift, is Gemini people, they're kind of like jack of all trades, master of none. But it works for them because they can just kind of hop around, and their curiosity is one of their greatest gifts. And it allows them to move through the world and to be really successful by doing that, by just like being very passionately curious and hopping from here to there. And so, with this new moon, it activates that essence. It activates that energy of, you know, to me, it lightens up all of the other transits that we've been speaking about. It brings in this like, oh, it's okay. Like things don't have to be hard. Things can just be curious, and we can explore in that way.
Absolutely. It's a new perspective, you know, this whole month cycle is really going to like wrap our brains around certain things, to look at them in a different way, you know, because a lot of a lot of how all of us go through life, which is interesting because that kind of ties into the North Node moving into Leo, is that a lot of people live in their minds. Mm-hmm. And we're all guilty of it, some more than others. And here we have the North Node in Leo calling us to step into our heart a little bit more. So this Gemini energy can be offering a new perspective on how our internal thought processes work in general. How healthy is that process? Because that new moon, obviously, after a few days, is going to oppose Saturn. It'll have those its first challenges there in the themes that we've been talking about.
I think that's good because I wonder if that will bring a little bit of grounding to the Gemini energy and some staying power too to whatever it is that you're initiating with this new moon.
Absolutely. Saturn cements things. So we're going to be cementing a lot of things in this next month with Gemini. So make sure that you're putting down the right things because something's gonna stick. So choose what that is.
Exactly, and I think that's the beauty of astrology is that there is always something that's happening, and when I think that I was thinking about this the other day when I was walking. Astrology can be predictive, but only when you decide to give away your power. And so the moment that you say to yourself, hey, like, I want to have a say in this and what's happening in my life. I want to know about the new moon in Gemini. What does that mean? Where is it activating my chart? Which house, which area of life? And okay, cool. It's activating my 10th, my career, or my first, my persona, or my second, my finances, whatever it is. What are you going to do about that? Like, what are you going to symbolically and realistically start with this new moon? And I think that's empowering, and that's really the way that I love to see astrology be done.
Yes.
Sorry, I got on a soapbox there, but
I am the queen of soapbox, so it's cool. I totally agree on that point because the new moon is really all about birthing new conditions. And like you said, looking at where it sits in your own chart and how it's connecting with whatever house is, that's really setting you up to where you can birth new conditions. Like being aware of where that happens, you can kind of focus your energy there and help get yourself in a different place by the time we have our next new moon cycle. So I find it interesting. I drew a couple cards for the new moon in Gemini, and I got the 5 of Wands with the Son of Pentacles. And I think it's very interesting, the 5 of Wands, because the 5 of Wands is all about, scattered energies, scattered energies and competition of sorts. But the scattered energies are really speaking to me here, especially the Son of Pentacles, which is being persistent and disciplined and being, the Saturn energy, really. So here this new moon in Gemini is coming along and being like, okay, so here's where things are scattered. So how can we clean this up this month? Well, what work can we do to clean it up? Because I don't know if you've run a full moon chart yet, because our full moon is going to be in Sagittarius. I'm curious to see how close it's going to be to Saturn when it happens.
Yeah, I can do that right now as we're talking.
Yeah, do that while we're talking. I haven't either, but it just occurred to me. I was like, wait a second, where's this full moon going to lie? Because a lot of times the new moon is giving us key to the apex, which is the full moon, and it's setting up that cycle. Exactly. With the 5 of Wands, we're really going to be getting in touch with kind of our wasted energy, and how we can get a new insights and new ways of cataloging our own thoughts and actions, especially with Mars and Gemini. To pull that scattering back, and get a little more focused.
And what's interesting about, that card is that I've heard it, the the Five of Wands is that it depicts I think 5 people with wands, and it looks like they're kind of like fighting.
Yes.
They're like using the sticks to like battle one another. And I remember reading somewhere that card, you could look at it like 2 different ways depending on what's going on in your consciousness. You could be like, oh, they're fighting, or you could be like, oh, they're playing. And like they're playing, like they're playing a pretend game or something like that.
Yeah, because they're not actually fighting in it. It's just a defensive position, and that's why the competition aspect comes up, is because you're holding yourself back. And I find that interesting, because obviously our full moon is going to be in Sagittarius, which here we are once again on that, thoughts versus beliefs and experiences axis, and also politics. So we can probably expect a full moon later on that's going to be highlighting these themes, which once again is that, playful adversary in a way. But not so playful, depending on who you're talking to.
Well, yeah. And so the full moon within this cycle is on June 9th, and it will be at 18 degrees of Sagittarius. Yeah, 18 degrees of Sagittarius. So,
not
with Saturn
close.
at 24 degrees, I mean, it's, I like to use an orb pretty tight of like 2 or 3 degrees for the lunation cycles, but
especially for transits. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, given that, I don't know, I would see how you feel is what I would say to people. I think that depends on if Saturn is activating anything in your chart. I do feel like it's important, given the Mars-Saturn opposition, and given the fact that Saturn is the first planet that the moon will aspect following the new moon.
That's true.
So I don't know. I think it's more, I would just pay attention to how we feel. With the full moon, is there a feeling of responsibility or constrictedness or diligence? If anything, I see it as like a positive reinforcement of whatever it is that you're working on through this whole lunation cycle from the new moon in Gemini on May 25th.
Yeah, especially since the making that contact with Saturn, even just approaching that, hopefully we will have emotionally gotten behind all that it is that we are building and focusing on in that Saturn energy that we're cultivating during this Gemini cycle. So hopefully, like you said, there will be some type of, awareness and even a release of certain aspects of Saturn that have been toying with us in a sense at that time. But that's a little in the future. So let's go back to our new moon here. And, so we're talking about, having new ways of thinking and new perspectives and our increased curiosity. We can be intrigued to study at this time and take up new courses of study for new information that we might need in order for our own success. This is an excellent time because the mind is so curious and flexible at this time that we're able to intake more information that we might need to help us along our path.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be shy about reaching out, asking for help, or collaborating with people. I find with Gemini energy, it's always surprising how someone will sometimes have a missing piece of the puzzle with whatever it is that you've been working on. So if there's someone that you want to partner with, or that you want to work with in some way, or any kind of collaboration is really great for Gemini energy.
Exactly. Because, Gemini, when you have your sun or your moon or your rising in Gemini, really you have to intellectualize, you have to get your thoughts out. So basically anything that's happening in your mind is going to come out your mouth. And it's all a process of learning, you know, like the Gemini is going to learn way more about themselves by just talking it out and communicating with others and sharing their ideas than if they were to mull that over in their head. You know, it's a very social and a networking type of energy that can get us more in tune with ourselves when we share with others. So let's see how, you know, like, what can we ask ourselves during this new moon, in Gemini? You know, I would say, where can we open ourselves up to new ideas and new perspectives and ways of thinking? You know, how can we, you know, birth new conditions for those types of things?
Yeah, definitely. Where could you use more curiosity in your life? What do you want to explore?
Yes, exactly. Because, you know, if you don't open yourself up to that curiosity, you know, curiosity is what leads us down the path we never knew we were going to take. So unless you allow yourself the ability to be curious, you might miss out a lot of things in life. So I absolutely agree with that. How can you let your curiosity work for you at this time? I'd also ask, you know, how can you be more flexible and adaptable to the situations that are around you? Because Gemini is all about being able to kind of, pardon the pun, you know, kind of flow in the wind, you know, like that's part of the nature. So, you know, with the moon there, you know, how can we be more emotionally flexible with ourselves at this time?
Definitely.
So it seems like we have a lot of very interesting aspects and things to look forward to over the next couple weeks. There's no lack of action in the planets right now by any means. So I think, you know, in spirit of this podcast, we've named it To Triumph Against All Odds. And that is exactly what we're learning here. You know, when life gives you a pickle, you just gotta eat it and enjoy it. I don't know. You just got there's an image for you. But it's true, you know, like sometimes you just you gotta work with what you got, you know, and, especially with all that Saturn energy that's coming this month is, you know, you gotta persevere. You gotta own that and you gotta want to win for yourself, you know, like here we go back to that node in Leo, you know, do it for yourself. Don't do it for anybody else. Do it for yourself. So.
Yeah, and I love that because I think that with all of this energy, there's two ways to look at it. It can be like, like life is hard, or this sucks, I don't like this situation, whatever it is. However, you know, if it's uncomfortable in any way, it's like, oh, uncomfortable equals bad. And it's like, well, no, like what is it that you can extract from this situation? Whatever struggle it is that you're going through, how can you make that work for you? My gut feeling is for all of us that whatever it is that's happening over the next month or so, whatever challenges there are, that there will be a triumph from this. There will be a benefit, because there will be a benefit when you engage with it, when you say, okay, I'm going to do the things that I need to do that are right for me. I'm going to have integrity. I'm going to face myself in a way that is honest.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, we're pretty much ask yourself how you can embrace your own self more, you know, ask yourself how you can face your own music and get honest. And you might want to ask yourself where there might be power struggles in your life or, and where you can kind of nip those in the bud. So you're in a more flowing, you know, Libra, Jupiter and Libra energy. Because actually Jupiter, just throw that in there. I know we kind of got to the full moon, but just a little added thing is Jupiter is going to go direct at that full moon as well.
That's right.
So we're going to see, as far as partnerships concerned and that kind of balance and that give take energy, we're going to see some motion there. So keep that in mind. If things, and we're just going to see motion everywhere in life when that goes direct. So keep in mind if there's a lot of blocks in your path in these next couple weeks. We're really just working through these final little stumbling blocks so that we can get to that, Jupiter in full speed ahead, and we can really manifest and expand our own selves when the time is right. Awesome. So, we encourage you to triumph against all odds. And, with us making over our identities over the past couple months, like this is a great way to get the new you out there and out there in public and networking and sharing your thoughts and ideas with others, because that's really what the energy of the air is bringing right now.
Yeah. And I would, I would leave our listeners with some type of concrete directive too. I would say to you to pick one aspect that we've talked about here, whether it's the nodes in Leo and Aquarius, or Mars opposite Saturn, getting shit done, Venus square Pluto, healing relationships, or new moon in Gemini with the new perspectives. Pick one of those topics and then do a little journaling. Just do some free writing on how that's working for you in your life, or what you feel. And, you might be surprised at how things open up when you explore that, especially with the written word.
Yeah, I could not agree more. That is a perfect directive for this Gemini cycle. Because so much can be gained about your own inner process if you allow yourself to journal and just get those thoughts out there. And if you're not an avid journaler, just know that, there's no pressure there to do so. But when you start doing it, you just become more and more confident with what you're writing and being able to share either your own words and thoughts, or just share with yourself some stuff that maybe you haven't looked at that's right in front of you. When it's all swirling in your head, it's not as real as when it's staring back at you from the screen or your notebook. So I think that is a wonderful, wonderful activity to do, especially in the new moon and up until the full moon. The whole cycle, why not? Journaling can always be a benefit. So I full-heartedly agree with that. So, all right. I think that we have covered many things, and I thank you for listening to us and our maiden voyage as podcasters. And we definitely will be back. So I wish you a fabulous Gemini cycle. Shawna, you have any closing words to say?
The only I do want to leave everyone with a way to connect with us until we do our next podcast. So I know for me, and I think for Mel as well, I'm super active on Instagram. And so if you want to get little updates or just, see what else is going on in the sky, you can connect with me on Instagram, Neo Feminine Astrology. And you can also find me on neofeminine.com.
Yes, and I fully recommend you checking her out on Instagram, because she has wonderful quotes that she shares every day, nearly, and charts. No, it's great. It gets you thinking. It definitely gets you thinking, and I highly recommend it. And if you want to find out more about me, you can check out energeticprinciples.com is where you'll find me. And I'm also on Instagram with my daily pictures that I draw for our our transits.
Mel's artwork is so cool and fun, and it's very like Aquarian. It's very it just, I don't know, I love it. I'm like, how cool is that? It's a fun little, if you need a little aesthetic inspiration for the day.
I love it. I appreciate it. So you can find me on Instagram at Energetic Principles. And we both do YouTube things. I do videos on the moon cycles, and then also I have a Sun in Gemini video that is going live on the 20th that has horoscopes for each sign for the month. So if you want to check that out, all this info can be found at energeticprinciples.com. And also, quick plug, we both do readings. So if anybody's interested in finding out more about getting a personal reading, please contact us. So yes, yay, I'm so excited. We made it through our first voyage, and we'll be back for more. And so we hope that you enjoyed your time with us.
Awesome. So. Have a wonderful month, you guys. Sending lots of love.
Yes. All right. Until next time, may the stars be with you.
Namaste.